Hello and welcome to my channel. I hope you enjoy this story. I'm going to try and upload a new story each day. Newport's Phantom Puppeteer. Holly Arnold had always felt a peculiar draw to the Isle of Wight, particularly the quaint town of Newport. Its cobbled streets and historic buildings whispered secrets of centuries past. She had moved there to escape the bustle of London, hoping the island's serenity would inspire her work as a puppeteer. Little did she know, Newport held more than just a peaceful retreat. It harbored a dark, restless history that would soon entangle her in a web of fear and intrigue. Holly discovered the old toy shop on one of her many explorations through Newport. It was a crumbling edifice tucked away in a forgotten alley. The sign above the door, Marian's Marionettes, swung eerily in the wind. Intrigued, Holly pushed open the door, the tinkling bell announcing her arrival. Inside, the shop was filled with an array of marionettes, each exquisitely crafted and eerily lifelike. Their motes danced in the sunlight that filtered through the grimy windows, casting long shadows on the floor. An elderly man with a stooped back and gnarled hand emerged from the back room. His eyes, though clouded with age, sparkled with an unsettling intensity. "Welcome, my dear. I am Marian, the puppeteer. What brings you to my humble shop?" Holly explained her passion for puppetry and her search for inspiration. Marian's eyes gleamed as he led her to a back room filled with ancient tools and half-finished marionettes. "These," he said, gesturing to the puppets, "are no ordinary marionettes. They are imbued with the souls of the dead, each one a vessel for a spirit from Newport's past." Holly's curiosity was piqued. Marian's tales of the island's history, of forgotten tragedies and unresolved vendettas, fascinated her. She spent hours listening to his stories, watching him work, and learning the craft that seemed almost magical in his hands. One day, Marian handed Holly a beautifully carved marionette, a young girl with hauntingly lifelike eyes. "This one is special," he said. "Her name is Eliza, and she lived here long ago. She was wronged, and her spirit is restless. Take her, and let her story unfold." Excited and a little unnerved, Holly took Eliza home. That night, as she practiced with the marionette, she felt an odd connection to the puppet. It was as if Eliza was guiding her movements, whispering her story through the delicate strings. Holly's performances with Eliza captivated her small audiences, each show revealing more of Eliza's tragic past. But as the days passed, Holly noticed strange occurrences. Eliza would move on her own, her glassy eyes following Holly around the room. Other marionettes, too, seemed to come to life, enacting scenes from the past with eerie precision. It was as if the puppets were reliving their stories, driven by unseen forces. One stormy night, Holly awoke to the sound of whispering. She followed the voices to her workshop, where she found Eliza and the other marionettes moving on their own. They were reenacting a gruesome scene of betrayal and murder, their wooden faces contorted in expressions of pain and anger. Holly tried to intervene, but an invisible force held her back, the strings pulling tight around her fingers, as if the spirits were using her to complete their macabre play. Desperate and terrified, Holly sought out Marian. She found him in his shop, his face pale and eyes wide with fear. "You must stop them," he whispered. "The spirits are growing stronger. They seek vengeance, and they will not rest until their stories are told and justice is served." Together, Holly and Marian devised a plan. They would perform one final show, a reenactment of the events that had led to the spirits' unrest. If they could give the souls the closure they sought, perhaps they would be free. The night of the performance, the old theatre was filled with an uneasy crowd. As Holly and Marian worked the strings, the marionettes came to life, reenacting scenes of love, betrayal, and murder. The air grew thick with a palpable tension as the final act approached. Eliza, the central figure, confronted her murderer, a betrayal revealed in the flickering candlelight. As the final scene played out, a chilling silence fell over the theatre. The marionettes froze, their eyes no longer filled with rage but with a haunting serenity. Holly felt the strings slacken, the oppressive weight lifting from her shoulders. But just as she thought it was over, a cold breeze swept through the theatre, extinguishing the candles. The marionette's eyes snapped open, filled with a malevolent glow. The spirits, it seemed, were not content with mere reenactment. They craved real justice, and they would not stop until they had it. Holly and Marian realized too late that they had underestimated the power of the spirits. The marionettes surged forward, their strings seemingly animated by a life of their own, wrapping around Holly and Marion like tendrils of darkness. Panic surged through Holly as she struggled against the tightening bonds, but the more she fought, the tighter they became. Marion's eyes widened with terror as he tried to cut the strings with an old pair of scissors, but the metal snapped like brittle twigs against the supernatural force. "Holly," he shouted, his voice hoarse with desperation. "We have to finish the story. Only then can they be set free." Holly nodded, her mind racing. She remembered Eliza's story, how she had been betrayed and murdered, her spirit left to wander in torment. They needed to give Eliza the justice she had been denied. Summoning every ounce of courage, Holly grasped the puppet of Eliza and began to move her, the marionette's eyes once again locking with hers. "Eliza," Holly whispered, her voice trembling. "Show us what happened. Help us bring your story to an end." The theater grew colder, the shadows lengthening as the marionettes moved with a renewed purpose. Eliza's puppet led the charge, guiding Holly's hands with a forceful determination. Scenes of the past unfolded with haunting clarity: Eliza's life, her betrayal by a trusted friend, her untimely death. The crowd watched in stunned silence, the atmosphere thick with tension and the scent of old dust and despair. As the final scene played out, Eliza's puppet confronted her murderer, a fellow marionette that seemed almost lifelike in its depiction of a man twisted by guilt and fear. Holly felt her own heart pounding as she enacted the confrontation, her fingers moving deftly yet almost automatically, as if Eliza herself were guiding them. "Why?" Eliza's puppet seemed to ask, her wooden face contorted with a mixture of sorrow and rage. "Why did you betray me?" The murderer, controlled by Marion, trembled as if haunted by the weight of his actions. "Forgive me, Eliza," Marion's voice choked out through the puppet. "I was weak, and my envy consumed me." In that moment, Holly felt a shift. The oppressive weight of the spirit's anger lifted, replaced by a profound sadness. The strings loosened, and the marionette's eyes lost their malevolent glow. The spirits, it seemed, had found some semblance of peace. But as Holly and Marion breathed a sigh of relief, a new horror unfolded. The marionettes, though no longer filled with rage, began to weep, a mournful, ghostly sound that echoed through the theater. Holly felt a cold hand brush against her cheek, and she turned to see Eliza's puppet standing before her, tears streaming down its wooden face. "Thank you," a soft ethereal voice whispered. "But our stories are not yet over." With a sudden, violent jerk, the marionettes broke free from their strings, moving independently. They surrounded Holly and Marion, their faces now twisted with an unnatural hunger. Holly realized with a jolt of terror that the spirits were not seeking peace, they were seeking escape, a way to inhabit the living world once more. Marion screamed as the marionettes descended upon him, their wooden hands clutching and tearing. Holly tried to run, but the marionettes were too fast, their movements fluid and relentless. She felt cold fingers wrap around her throat, squeezing the breath from her lungs. In her final moments, as darkness closed in, Holly saw Eliza's face, no longer filled with sorrow, but with a cruel satisfaction. The spirits had found their justice, but at a terrible price. As her vision faded, Holly understood the truth: Newport's phantom puppeteer was no longer in control. The spirits of the dead had taken over, and they would not rest until they had claimed their vengeance. The theater fell silent once more, the marionettes standing still as statues, their eyes blank and lifeless. Outside, the storm raged on, the wind howling through the empty streets of Newport, carrying with it the whispers of the dead, now free to roam the world they had once inhabited. The next morning, the townspeople found the theater in disarray, with no sign of Holly or Marion. The marionettes were gone, leaving only a chilling note pinned to the stage with a rusted nail: "We are free now. Beware the tales of the past, for they may yet return to claim the living." From that day forward, the people of Newport spoke in hushed tones of the phantom puppeteer and the restless spirits of the Isle of Wight, forever haunted by the dark legacy of Marion's marionettes. The chilling tale of Newport's phantom puppeteer quickly spread throughout the Isle of Wight. People whispered about the mysterious disappearances of Holly Arnold and Marion, and the eerie silence that now pervaded the old theatre. The townsfolk avoided the crumbling building, but the haunting stories persisted, growing more elaborate with each retelling. Years passed, and the old toy shop where Holly had first encountered Marion's marionettes remained shadowed, a grim reminder of the horrors that had unfolded within its walls. The once bustling alley became a forgotten bath, overgrown with weeds and cloaked in shadows. One autumn evening, a young couple named Mark and Lucy decided to explore the abandoned parts of Newport. They had heard the legends of the phantom puppeteer and, driven by a mix of curiosity and skepticism, wanted to see the infamous theatre for themselves. The air was crisp, and the sun had begun to set, casting long, eerie shadows as they made their way to the forgotten alley. "This place gives me the creeps," Lucy murmured, clutching Mark's arm as they approached the old toy shop. The door hung slightly ajar, and a cold breeze wafted from within, carrying the faint scent of decayed wood and something else, something dark and unsettling. "We'll just take a quick look," Mark reassured her, pushing the door open further. The bell above tinkled, its sound echoing unnaturally in the stillness. Dust coated every surface, and the remnants of Marion's once proud collection lay scattered and broken. As they ventured deeper into the shop, Lucy felt an inexplicable chill. "I don't like this, Mark. Let's go." But Mark's curiosity was piqued. He spotted a door at the back of the shop, slightly ajar. "Just a little further, Lucy. This must lead to the theatre." They entered the back room, finding it filled with old tools and unfinished marionettes. Among the debris, a single marionette stood upright, remarkably well preserved. It was Eliza, her glassy eyes reflecting the dim light. "Look, it's one of the puppets from the story," Mark said, reaching out to touch it. "Don't," Lucy warned, but it was too late. As Mark's fingers brushed against Eliza, a cold, electric shock surged through him. He recoiled, shaking his hand. The room grew colder, and the shadows deepened. Eliza's eyes seemed to follow them, a silent observer to their intrusion. Then, without warning, the marionette's head turned slightly, and its wooden lips parted. "Leave this place," a voice whispered, seemingly coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. Mark and Lucy froze, terror gripping their hearts. The temperature plummeted further, their breath visible in the frigid air. The marionettes scattered around the room began to twitch, their limbs jerking in unnatural movements. "We need to get out of here," Lucy said, her voice trembling. They turned to leave, but the door slammed shut with a force that rattled the walls. The marionettes moved more vigorously now, their eyes glowing with a sinister light. Mark and Lucy backed away, their fear mounting with every second. Suddenly, the back wall of the room cracked open, revealing a hidden passageway. A faint light glowed from within, and the sound of faint, ghostly music drifted out. The couple exchanged terrified glances, but with the marionettes closing in, they had no choice but to enter the passage. The tunnel led them to the old theatre, its once grand stage now covered in dust and cobwebs. The seats were empty, but the air buzzed with an unseen presence. On the stage, a marionette dressed as Marion himself stood, strings hanging from the rafters above. As they stepped closer, the marionette began to move, reenacting the final moments of Marion's life. His face twisted in horror, the puppet mimicked Marion's screams and struggles. It was a gruesome spectacle, and Mark and Lucy could not look away. "We have to stop this," Mark said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But how?" Lucy replied, tears streaming down her face. "What can we do?" A sudden inspiration struck Mark. The note, the one found on the stage, it said something about tales of the past. Maybe if we tell their stories, we can lay the spirits to rest. Desperation lending them strength, they began to speak, recounting the tales they had heard about the phantom puppeteer, the tragedies of Eliza and the other marionettes. As they spoke, the theatre seemed to react. The air grew warmer, and the marionettes' movements slowed, their expressions softening. Encouraged, they continued, their voices growing stronger. They spoke of betrayal and loss, of justice denied and vengeance sought. The spirits, now visible as ethereal forms, gathered around, listening intently. As the final tale was told, Eliza herself appeared, her spectral form beautiful yet sorrowful. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. "You have given us the closure we sought." With a final, collective sigh, the spirits began to fade, their forms dissolving into the air. The marionettes fell lifeless to the ground, the string severed. The oppressive weight lifted, and the theatre was once again silent. Mark and Lucy stood alone on the stage, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The nightmare was over, the spirits laid to rest at last. They made their way back through the passage, out of the toy shop, and into the cool night air. As they emerged into the street, they turned to see the old toy shop crumble, collapsing in on itself as if it had fulfilled its purpose. The alley was once again silent, the haunting legacy of Marion's marionettes finally put to rest. But even as they walked away, a lingering whisper echoed in the night, a reminder that some stories are never truly forgotten, and the past always has a way of haunting the present. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please don't forget to like, and even better, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I hope you have had or have a great day.